of a Pharisee, and he will heal on the Sabbath. It'll make them hopping mad, but he has a message for them in verses 1 through 24. So in verse 1, it happened when he went into the house of one of the leaders of the Pharisees on the Sabbath to eat bread. They were watching him closely. Everywhere Jesus went, they were watching him closely, the Pharisees and the scribes. They would do anything to find any kind of fault against him in any way. Let me take my hearing aids out so you can hear me. Jesus was probably still in Perea when this happened. He's invited into the house of one of the rulers of the Pharisees. It's not certain, but some think that this man may have been a member of the Sanhedrin. We don't have any way of knowing. No one is sure of this, but at least we know he was a ruler. He was a Pharisee. And so Jesus accepted the invitation. But listen, he knows his heart too, doesn't he? Does he know our hearts today? You betcha. And so he knew his heart. And he probably this Pharisee probably wanted to know more about Jesus. Maybe it was good and maybe it was bad that he was trying to learn. He was trying to learn more of his teaching, and it was the Sabbath. That's the time frame right now. It was the custom of the Jews to meet as families in a quiet conversation on the Sabbath and other holy days, and the ones there are watching Jesus. They're always watching him. The eyes are always on him. They have an evil plan, the Pharisees, the Jewish leaders, but Jesus knows what it is, and we're looking for any reason to accuse him of violating the Sabbath or any rules or any of their customs or any of their customs or traditions that they had set forth. 2 and 3. And there in front of him, suffering from dropsy. And Jesus answered and spoke to the lawyers and Pharisees, saying, "Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath or not?" Does Jesus know what he's thinking in his heart? He does, doesn't he? He knows they're thinking, "Oh, is he going to try to heal someone on the Sabbath?" And according to their traditions, boy, you couldn't do anything. By the way, dropsy is edema today. It's an excess of buildup of fluid in the tissues. We can all see what's going on here. This man is suffering in front of Jesus and everybody, and we can assume they had, I'm just guessing here, so I'm going to say, maybe they set him right in front. Maybe they're going to use him. I don't know. I don't have any idea, but maybe he's right in front, and the Pharisees is waiting like a lion in the woods. Like I say, dropsy was our edema today, the buildup of fluid on the body tissues. The condition is very painful. It was incurable back then. It could be the result of a previous disease, but what we do know is Luke is the physician, and he singles out this case. It came to his attention being a doctor, and so he's mentioned it to us. So Jesus knows what the Pharisees, he knows what the Pharisees and lawyers have always plotted. The scribes were experts with the old law, and they're all the time looking for something. And so Jesus asked them what was on their heart. He knows what's on their heart. He knows what's on our hearts. And so Jesus asked them, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath or not? He wants a straight up answer from them. And the Jewish leaders, they want to be able to accuse him of healing on the Sabbath if they answer what they truly believe, that it was unlawful because of their traditions. It wasn't unlawful to do good on the Sabbath, was it? No. It wasn't unlawful to do good on the Sabbath. They made it so with their traditions, with man-made rules. And so Jesus spoiled their evil plan. They had plotted. If they answered this question that it was lawful and he didn't heal him, they would be able to accuse him of showing no mercy to this man. Or if he said it was unlawful, then he broke the Sabbath. But his enemies didn't say a thing. They can't answer the question he's asking them. He's asking them, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath or not? They can't answer it. They can't answer. And so in verse 4 through 6, they kept silent, but they kept silent. And he took hold of him and healed him and sent him away. And he said to them, which one of you will have a son or an ox fall into a well and will not immediately pull him out on the Sabbath day? And they could make no reply to this, because there is no answer to this other than you do good, isn't it? You get that son out of the well. You take care of that ox. Remember last week in the previous chapter, he used oxen, and who doesn't water your oxen, and who doesn't water your donkey, I think it was, on the Sabbath. You unhook them from the stall, you take them to the water, and that's on the Sabbath. What's wrong with that? Nothing is wrong with that. And he did that. He talked about that the previous chapter. And so there's nothing in the Sabbath laws that forbid an example that he's giving here, or healing or doing good. And this would sure fit this man. You know, no one will leave their ox or their son in a well until after the Sabbath. So Jesus had exposed their false teaching. All who are there, he took hold of the man in front of everybody, healed him in an instant, and then sent him away. Jesus had just left everybody there speechless, just like he always did when he healed someone. And so now Jesus will go to verses 7 through 24. He's going to give them 3 parables now. In verses 7 through 11, I want you to follow along with me, chapter 14 of Luke, beginning at verse number 7, the first parable. And he began speaking a parable to the invited guests when he noticed how they had been picking out the places of honor at the table, saying to them, when you are invited by someone to a wedding feast, do not take the place of honor, for someone more distinguished than you may have been invited by him, the one who's inviting, the one of the feast. And he who invited you both will come and say to you, give me your place to this man. And then in disgrace you proceed to occupy the last place. But when you're invited, go and recline at the last place, so that when the one who has invited you comes, he may say to you, friend, move up higher. Then you will have honor in the sight of all who are at the table with you. For everyone who exalts himself will be humble, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. So he gives these parables while he's eating at the table with this Pharisee, and the Pharisees invited him to his home, and Jesus noticed that the men picked out places of honor at the table when they came to eat at his home. And so in verse 8, he hits them with it. When you're invited by someone to a wedding feast, do not take the place of honor, for someone more distinguished than you may have been invited by him. It would be embarrassing for him to come up to you and say, I need for you to move back there, and I need for you to move up here. That would be embarrassing. We can see that in our minds. And so in verse 9, he who invited you both will come and say, give us the place of this man, and then in disgrace you will proceed to occupy last place. So you think you deserve a place of honor. The Pharisees thought they deserved an honor. They needed to be welcomed in the marketplaces and recognized. And they wanted to take the seat that for someone else. They wanted the chief seats in the synagogue. They'd sit up higher. And then someone tells you to give up your seat, you'd be embarrassed. You'd get up and you'd move. But you're not always given a seat of honor for every occasion. That's what he's trying to say here. In verse 10, but when you're invited, go and recline at the last place, so that when one who has invited you comes, he may say to you, friend, move up higher, and then then you will have honor in the sight of all who are at the table with you. So if you really wanted to be honored, What's he say to do? If you really want to be honored, what does he say to do here in this parable? Huh? Humble yourself. Go to the last place to sit. Go to the last place. Be humble. That's what he's saying. If you want to really be honored, take the last place to sit with a humble attitude. He wants us to have a humble attitude, doesn't he? In all things. And then when you move up to a higher place in this parable, everyone's going to honor you at the table. But that's what he's trying to get at. And for everyone, he says in verse 11, who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. This is Jesus' conclusion to this parable. Pride, a haughty spirit. Who creates this? Who creates that kind of a spirit? Someone like that wants to be thought well of, that is not humble. Pride and haughty spirit comes before the fall. This is the principle in the affairs of the kingdom of God. Jesus has the higher spiritual sense, and this principle is taught throughout the Bible. Look at Proverbs 16, verse 18. And we'll come back to Luke in a second. Proverbs 16, verse 18 and 19. We'll be back at Luke 14 and verse 12 in a second. Proverbs 16, verse 18. Pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before stumbling. It is better to be humble in spirit with the lowly than to divide the spoil with the proud. Pretty straightforward, isn't it? Pretty straightforward. So back to Luke 14, verse 12. 12 through 14 is against selfishness, inviting only those who are close to you and give entertainment for. That's what he's going to be talking about. Selfishness, inviting only people who are close to you. Verse 12. And he also went on to say to the one who had invited him, when you give a luncheon or a dinner, do not invite your friends or your brothers or your relatives or rich neighbors, otherwise they may also invite you in return, and that will be your repayment. Now he's talking to this Pharisee sitting at the dinner table who's been feeding him a meal. Jesus says, rebuke those who have selfish ways. Invite others to the feast, and then invite others that you know that you usually invite too. It gave Jesus the opportunity to teach the correct way of working with people, didn't he? He gave the correct way, in this case, to invite people to the feast. It was customary to invite your friends, your relatives, and your rich neighbors, and Jesus says not to do that, or they will expect you to invite you back. They will expect you to come back to there. They want to invite you, and that'll be your reward. No other reward. Verse 13 and 14. But when you give a reception, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed, since they do not have the means to repay you. For you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. What do you think about that? How do you feel about that? Anybody? Jesus is giving instructions on who not to invite for this, and he's using a dinner, and he's giving positive teachings to invite those to extend charity to those who are in need. It's far better to give the feast to them instead of to give the feast to someone that don't need it and expect to be entertained in return, because that's what they did. They invited their rich friends and all that to come to the feast, and they expected to be invited back and to be entertained in return. So we should do what we can and this is the message. We should do what we can to feed the poor, to help the maimed, to guide the blind, instead of satisfying what for us? Our pride, our selfishness. We don't need it. No one receives a reward for exchange at a feast and entertainment, but they will for helping someone, to helping the distressed, who can, the ones that do that, do all they can in the name of Jesus Christ, and that's what we do. So Jesus is teaching us that selfishness is condemned, but to help others, is it for an earthly reward that we help others? So someone will see us doing those things and go, hey, look at them. Is that the purpose? No, it's not. No one receives a reward. We don't need it. We don't use selfish pride. But they were doing that, and it's all selfishness. But as a Christian, we don't do that for pride. We help others. We do all of those things. We take care of the poor. We do that as a Christian, not for selfishness, because that's condemned, but we do all we can in whose name? Jesus Christ. That He gets the glory, not us. So I guess you could say it this way. This is the way I always think anyway. To help others for no earthly reward. To help others for no earthly reward. We get our reward when? At the judgment. So I like to think of it this way. Laying up treasure where? In heaven. Laying up treasures in heaven. So, and He counts us as doing the same. Matthew 25, verse 31 through 46. We get our reward. The righteous will be raised from death. Verse 15. Luke 14, verse 15. When one of those who were reclining at the table with Him heard this, one at the table heard this, and said to him, Blessed is everyone who will eat bread in the kingdom of God. So this man was probably a Jew. No one knows exactly. And he was saying, earthly or spiritual kingdom, but he gave the Lord another occasion for a parable, the Great Supper. He's going to talk about the Great Supper, and He's going to give a parable again on eating. And what are they doing? They're eating. They're sitting at a table, eating, sitting on the cushions, eating. So Jesus is going to give this parable in verses 16 through 24. And this seems to be the answer to the man who made that statement in verse 15. In verse 15, he said, he had said in verse number 15, when one of those who were reclining at the table with Him heard everything Jesus said, he said to him, Blessed is everyone who will eat bread in the kingdom of God. And where that man is talking about a physical kingdom like the Jews are expecting, I doubt he's talking about a spiritual kingdom if he's a Jew. And so it seems that this answer that Jesus gives is designed to correct the idea that it's not a physical kingdom. The Jewish idea of the earthly Messiah, that the earthly kingdom, that He would defeat the Romans and they'd have their glorious kingdom again like Solomon, days of Solomon. So in verse 16 and 17, Jesus says to him, a man giving a big dinner, and he invited many. And at the dinner hour, he sent his slave to say to those who had been invited, "Come, for everything is ready now." He's got this feast, it's ready at the dinner hour. And he invited them to come. And so Jesus is still at the feast, and he's given this fundamental truth here. He didn't contradict the man, he just taught him the truth. That's what he's doing. This teaching was opposed to this man's false ideas. And so he lifts their minds to a better kingdom, a spiritual kingdom. Verse 18. But they all alike began to make excuse. The first one said to him, "I bought a piece of land and I need to go out and look at it. Please consider me excused." So these three people, he's going to begin to make an excuse. The first man said he did what? What did the first man do? He bought this land. He needs to go look at it. He bought this piece of land. He said, "I need to go look at it." Land was valuable, and this excuse may seem reasonable to some when you first hear it, but we say to ourselves, why did you buy land if you didn't see it, or if he had never seen it? So this excuse, if it is reasonable or if it's unreasonable, this is his excuse. And so when you first hear it, you say that to yourself, well, why would you do that? And maybe he had to go to the owner first before he went to see it. We don't know. Maybe he had to just go to the owner to complete the sale. Maybe he had already seen it, and it was not in the city, so he couldn't get back in time. I'm trying to make excuses for this guy. But on the other hand, all of this could have waited, couldn't it? So verse 19, another one said, "I bought 5 yoke of oxen, and I'm going to try them out. Please consider me excused." So we see here the plow, how they work. You know, they test the strength and endurance of the oxen. That's what when they're buying oxen, they want to make sure they have that they're strong, that they have endurance. And so this man, too, has this business going on. Then he might have waited until later, couldn't he? Couldn't he have waited until later? Let me ask you something. What's he teaching us right now? What's he teaching us about, you and I today? What's he teaching us?
Do things when they should be done. And don't wait until, I need to get out of this, then I'll do this. Do things as they come up. Do them.
Yeah. He's doing that. Exactly. And he's also teaching us about priorities, isn't he? That is important, what you said. I'm not saying that. That's one way. That's one thing you learn. But it's also priorities. And so here's the next one, verse 20. I married a wife, and for that reason I cannot come. So we're told he got, I don't know when he got married. I don't know if he's been married for 5 years or one day or what, but he's got a wife. He got married. And so this is an excuse that he uses, but it's a domestic excuse. It's not a business excuse. And so in 1 Corinthians 7, 32 through 33, he tells us in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 32 and 33, "But I want you to be free from concern. One who is unmarried is concerned about the things of the Lord, how he may please the Lord. But the one who is married is concerned about the things of the world, how he may please his wife." In other words, he's coming back to priorities for us. We see this man has a conflict, doesn't he? I suppose he does. And you could say he has conflicting duties at home. But it comes down to what? Priority. Priority. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the excuses were reasonable, weren't they?
Reasonable, but not good. They wasn't bad
Yeah,
But they learn really, and that's where we are, I think, too. It's not necessarily a bad thing.
yeah,
But upper level of priorities.
yeah.
Of doing the first thing first.
Thank you, Todd. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
I feel like they took for granted what the guy who sold the dinner had honored them,
Uh-huh.
and they took that for granted and they didn't honor him back.
That's true.
Their own doing.
That's true. That's true. Anybody else? Verse 21. So now the slave is going to come to the master, and he's going to tell him the results of this invitation to come to his meal he has ready. Verse 21. And the slave came back and reported this to his master. Then the head of the household became angry and said to the slave, Go out at once into the streets and the lanes of the city and bring in here the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame. Would that be someone you would invite? This guy? Maybe I ought to ask it that way. No, you wouldn't. He wouldn't do that. This master wouldn't do that. But he's doing it now, isn't he? What? Why? What's at stake for this master? His pride. His pride. He wants a full house. He wants to feed them. And I want you to notice in these examples that Jesus gives, he has given us 3 different phases in life. They're not flimsy, like Todd said. They're not ridiculous excuses, but we may tend sometime to use an excuse like that they're making. These excuses were given that were important to them, weren't they? Weren't these excuses important to these people that made that excuse? I have a wife. I'm married. I have bought 5 oxen. I bought a piece of land. It's valuable. I mean, there's nothing. Exactly what Todd said. There's nothing ridiculous about these excuses, and we may tend sometime to use excuses. And these excuses that were given were important to them. They were important to them. But still considered an insult to that master. Excuses. That they still refused to come to his feast. And as you can see, these men have different priorities. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah. 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 And remember the Jews when Paul and Barnabas had been converting Gentiles, and these Jewish Pharisees that had become a Christian, but they were a Judaizing Christian. They thought you had to be circumcised and obey the old law. Tried to bring it back, didn't they? Like that. So notice those 3 examples. So the master told the slave to go out in the streets, go out in the lanes. The streets of the city were a higher class of people on Broadway, on the Broadway lanes of Broadway. The poor people were in the narrow alleys and the streets. So now the invitations are offered to everyone, the poor, the maimed, the blind, the lame. This is an urgent invitation, isn't it? He is making an urgent invitation for anyone. What do you think of when you think of that? He's making an urgent invitation that whoever will come to the feast, please come. How do you relate that? Today? Yeah. When you invite them, come and hear the gospel. Yeah, now's the time. That's right, Patricia. Verse 22 and 23. And the slave said, Master, what you commanded has been done. We went out in the streets and all the alleys. It's been done. and still there is room. And the master said to the slave, go out in the highways and along the hedges and compel them to come in so that my house may be filled. I love King James. Go out in the highways and hedges and compel them to come in. That's the way most of us know that sentence. So the highways was out on public roads. Hedges would be the narrow paths. Verse 24, for I tell you, none of these men who were invited shall taste the death of my dinner. So these three men that were invited, they rejected the invitation, and Jesus taught that the class he's teaching that we're all invited, isn't he? And the priorities are come to his feast. Now, I remember Jim taught a class, and I bring it up again. When these three men were invited and they rejected the invitation, it had to do exactly what Jim was teaching on a Wednesday night. What was that about? It's about consequences for not coming to the feast, for having other priorities in life. They refused the invitation, and so they were offered various excuses to not accept it. But the message is Gentiles are now invited, and they're more worthy because they accepted the blessings of God that was extended to the Jews, and the Jews won't come to the feast. Everybody with me?
That's who Christ sought out from the beginning.
Yeah.
Poor, crippled, and blind, and lame.
Yeah.
These other folks thought they were good.
Yeah.
Please accept mine.
Yeah. You're right. Thank you. That's the right guy. I don't know where to go on or end it right there. I think I'm going to stop right there. We'll pick it up at verse 25 next time.